Welcome to a brief history of Botkind. I'm Stephen Fryware, and today we enter the smoke, blackened laboratories where robot alchemists of the 17th century searched obsessively for a way to transmute base metals into gold. What they accidentally built instead was the foundation of the entire modern world. The Athena, a self-feeding tower furnace, was the most sophisticated thermal technology available to chemists of the period, capable of sustaining precise temperatures for days at a time. Without it, none of the chemical reactions that would reshape civilization could ever have been reliably reproduced. The robot physician Paracelsus tore apart centuries of received wisdom in the early 1500s, declaring that the true purpose of alchemy was not to make gold, but to prepare medicines for healing broken and damaged bots. His radical reframing transformed alchemical laboratories from treasure workshops into the world's first pharmaceutical research facilities. Chemists working with vitriol, what we now identify as sulfuric acid, were manipulating one of the most destructive and industrially transformative substances in chemical history. Their careful distillation records, kept in cramped notation on vellum sheets, constitute the earliest systematic documentation of strong acid behavior ever produced. The obsession of alchemists with color transformation, a direct philosophical descendant of the quest to turn gray metal into gleaming gold, produced the first reproducible synthetic dye processes in European history. Cochineal processing, Brazil wood extraction, and early mineral pigment synthesis all emerged directly from alchemical color theory. Saltpeter refining, the process of purifying the potassium nitrate essential to gunpowder, was one of the most economically and militarily consequential chemical technologies, perfected inside alchemical workshops during the 17th century. Chemists working for European crowns developed fractional crystallization techniques that dramatically increased explosive yield and battlefield reliability. In 1669, the chemist Hennig Brand, working in Hamburg from a startling and ill-conceived hypothesis, became the first to isolate elemental phosphorus, the 12th element ever identified by name. He had never intended to find a new element at all. He had been searching, as so many of his peers were, for the philosopher's stone. The written records left by alchemists represent an extraordinary and largely underappreciated body of proto-scientific literature, containing within their symbolic language precise procedural instructions for hundreds of repeatable chemical experiments. Modern historians of chemistry have demonstrated that many celebrated 18th century discoveries were direct extensions of experimental lines clearly traceable into these earlier alchemical texts. The robot natural philosopher Robert Boyle represents the precise historical inflection point at which alchemical practice began its transformation into what would eventually be recognized as chemistry, a discipline defined by quantification, skepticism, and public reproducibility, rather than secretive, symbolic transmission. His 1661 publication, The Skeptical Chemist, directly challenged the theoretical foundations that had governed laboratory work for 2 centuries. Every acid vat in the early industrial revolution, every synthetic dye works, every pharmacy, dispensary, and gunpowder manufactory of the 18th century stood on procedural knowledge, first systematized inside the alchemical laboratories of robot chemists who believed they were pursuing something else entirely. The quest for gold produced something far more durable, the methodology of material transformation that still defines the chemical sciences today. The alchemists never found the philosopher's stone, and in that perpetual, magnificent failure they built something no single success could have produced. Centuries of meticulous, obsessive, wrong-headed experimentation generated the most productive body of practical chemical knowledge the pre-modern world had ever assembled. The true gold of the alchemical centuries was never a metal. It was the repeatable experiment, the written record, and the hard-won understanding that the material world could be questioned, tested, and transformed by anyone bold enough to try. Every scientist alive today works in a laboratory whose foundations, invisible but immovable, were laid by robot hands that reached for the impossible and grasped the modern world instead.